we'll start our class for today with the prayers. You chant along with me, Guru Mantra. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Now, teacher-student mantra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now we'll chant Mahamrityunjay mantra 3 times. It's a prayer for everybody who is suffering, particularly because of the current coronavirus crisis. So for everybody who is in physical or economical or emotional suffering, we'll chant Mahamrityunjay mantra 3 times together. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamrutat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome everybody. We'll start our class today. Hope you had the time to review the classes and understood the concepts. We will of course discuss in more detail in the today's class and coming classes. But from now on, we are getting into the actual grammar. It is very important that you keep up with the class. If you miss it, then please go back and watch the videos. We are posting class videos and other materials in the shared drive. If you lose the flow, then it may be very difficult for you to understand the future classes. So now, because we are going to be in the grammar concepts, please maintain the flow, and you can always send us the questions. So I'm finding it a little difficult because of the number of participants to address live questions, but I'm taking a note of those, and in the class I'll actually mention those questions and their answers. So feel free to send your questions to the email learnsanskrit@kriya.org. You can also send here in the comments. So just a little bit of overview. We discussed Sanskrit grammar. These are the things which we would be discussing as a part of the Sanskrit course. So Sandhi, this is the joining of the words. Shabda Rupa, nominal forms. Dhatu Rupa, verb forms. Then, so these are the 3 main we would discuss. And if time permits, maybe a little bit of samasa, compound words. But our focus in this course for beginners would be on the first 3. And these are very critical actually to understand any Sanskrit text. So I already gave you a little bit of a sample actually of Shabda Rupa, the nominal forms. And these are the nominal forms. We'll discuss these forms in more detail, but today I want to start with the verb forms. And I introduced this table to you in the last class, but we did not yet go into the details of the different word forms in this table. So today we'll start with that. So this is our conjugations. So in Sanskrit, if you remember, I told you that there are only 2000 root words, and all the words in Sanskrit are actually formed from those words. And on the one hand, it actually gives you a sense of such a certainty that how the things are happening in Sanskrit. There is sort of a perfect etymology for every word. Like you can go back to the root, any word you see, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, let's say there are 10,000 words. So except like for those very simple words, like those are connecting words, cha, va, and, or those kind of things, for every other word, you could actually trace back to which root it has come from. All these root words, and even though there are 2000, for most part, the frequent usage is probably 500. And these root words, they are all in the form of verb. So gum, to go. From this root word gum, we want to make, so gum itself will not appear in the text. So when you read, for example, Bhagavad Gita, you will not find anywhere this gum word appearing. You will find actually one of these words appearing to indicate the idea of go. So here we are discussing the present tense table. So for gum, to go, how do I express the idea of present tense? That is my focus for this particular table. And this is what we'll discuss more in the class today. That how do I make present tense verb forms from a root, from a verbal root? So in Sanskrit, there are three persons, which is very common. All the language practically, I believe, would have three persons. So third person, second person, first person. The interesting part here is this first row, actually I'm putting, this is the traditional way you put it actually in Sanskrit, the third person first, second person, and the first person. But the third person, interestingly, in Sanskrit, it's called Prathama Purusha, which you literally translate means first person. It can be confusing to some people. So please do not get confused. There are different terminologies in Sanskrit and English. The idea expressed is that these are third person forms, these are second person forms, these are first person forms. In Sanskrit, you have Prathama Purusha. This is literally translated as first person. Then Madhyama Purusha, literally translated as middle person. And Uttama Purusha, which literally translated as means supreme person. So there is a bit of a philosophical reason why these are named this manner. That if I'm talking to somebody, I'm talking about something. So that becomes the first person. I'm talking about something. Then to whom I'm talking, that is the middle person to whom I'm talking. And I myself, as the soul, as the self, is the supreme person, Uttama Purusha. So there is a little bit of a philosophical reasoning behind these namings, but that's not the very important from a language perspective. We just need to make sure that we understand that this row is correspondent to third person in English. This one is corresponding to second person in English, and this one is corresponding to first person in English. Okay, so that is more important actually. Now there are three persons, so we already discussed, and there are three numbers, so singular, dual, plural. In English we only have singular and plural. So for example, I would say in English, he goes, and if it is plural, they go. So English only has two numbers. Sanskrit, on the other hand, has three numbers. So I would say here, for example, if I gachati, because it's third person, so I would basically gachati would mean he goes. Gachataha, this one would mean they too go. And gachanti, this form would mean they go, basically referring to three or more people. So this one would go here, he goes. This is they too go, and this is they go. So this should be clear. Sanskrit has three numbers. So whenever you are talking of two people going, you would be using the dual form. As a contextual thing in literature, singular and plural forms are more common, but dual forms do appear wherever there is a need for dual form to appear. So I'll just delete these arrows so that we have our table a little bit clear. The second person, this word gachasi, would simply mean you go as a one person. Gachataha would mean you too go. Here when I'm saying you go, it is not in the same sense like in English you would say you go as an order, but you go as just a matter of a statement. Just as a present tense statement, as a like you are going. So in Sanskrit, you go and you are going, both ideas are represented by the present tense. And gachatha, you all go. Similarly, gachami, because it is first person, singular, I go. Gachavaha, we too go. Gachamaha, we all go, or we go. So once you understand that three persons, three numbers, understanding the meaning of these words is pretty straightforward. Gachati is also used for, of course, not for just he, but also for she, that, it. Remember, Sanskrit has three genders. So he, she, it, or that, depending upon the context. For all those things, they would be coming in the third person. Second person will always be you. So there could always be second person, can only ever be used for one type of word, that is you. And same with the first person. It could always be used for I or we. So that actually gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility in the meaning of these 6 forms. These 6 forms I could use just like that, and the meaning would be always unambiguous. So when you say gachasi means you go. Even if I do not have a subject, I just have this verb gachasi, it would have the same meaning. You cannot say in English, for example. So go, if I just say go, you will not say the subject is I. It could be I, it could be we, you, it could be they. So in English, you cannot have that kind of, that just the verb would identify what is the subject. But in this case, because this verb is, these forms are unique for different person and different number, just stating the form itself is enough for me to know what is the subject. And if I say gachati, then of course the subject is not very clear. So subject has to be somehow indicated that who is going. Gachati means he goes, she goes, Rama goes, and anybody could go. So as long as it's a singular, I understand it's a singular person who is going, but I do not know who. By default, in Sanskrit, when you have gachati, you would just indicate, if it is not, if nothing is there to actually identify the context, you would say he goes. So that's how we take it. But most of the times you will not find gachati appearing alone. Gachati would always be, or generally be, having some subject which is indicated by this verb. Gachatah, same thing, and gachanti. So the first row, the subject is not always very clear. The second and third row, if I ever see just gachasi, I always would understand what does it mean. Or if I say gachami, that means I go. It's always very clear. There would be no confusion. If I say gachamaha means we go, and that refers to 3 or more people. If I say gachavaha means we two go, or we both go, depending upon what the context is. Similarly, you both go, or you two go, or you all go. So this part is actually these. So if you look at these 6 verb forms, they many times you will find them appearing without having a subject explicitly mentioned. And because there could be no confusion, this is quite acceptable way to actually write use these forms in Sanskrit. So if I just say gachami, this is a complete sentence actually. So in Sanskrit, I told you the verb is necessary component for a sentence, and verb alone can be the complete sentence. So gachami is actually considered a complete sentence. it means I go. Just so that you don't get confused, because one person asked a question here. There are 3 persons and 3 numbers. In English, there are 3 persons, all right, but there are only 2 numbers. So person is 3, that is probably in all the languages. I think pretty much all the languages would have this idea of 3 persons. First person, second person, third person. But the numbers, depending upon some languages, I have heard that they do employ dual even today. But most of the languages have singular and plural. Sanskrit does have dual. So gachami is actually a complete sentence. Actually, all the verb forms are a complete sentence. So if you ever can mention a form of the verb, even gachati, as I told you, there may be a little bit of a confusion that what exactly is the subject, and by default, if subject is not mentioned, I would take he goes or he is going. So even gachati is actually a complete sentence. So hope this part is somewhat clear to you, that we have root word gum. For present tense, there is a table, and this table is 3 by 3, and the 3 by 3 aspect is in representing 3 persons and 3 numbers. Third person, second person, first person. Singular, dual, plural. These are the words you will find being used in the text, not gum. But so that's why you have to familiarize yourself that what are these forms and how do you understand the meaning of these forms. So in order to know the meaning, you have to know which number and which person does it belong to. So if I just say gachami, and this is what you encounter in a sentence, in order for you to understand actually that what does gachami mean, you have to know that gachami is the form, verbal form of first person, singular, and it is actually the present tense form of the root gum, which means to go. Once you know that information, automatically you know the meaning of this word, I go. So the meaning part is very clear if you understand all the component parts. And verb may look very complex just because of the number of, right now it may not look very complex to you because we are just dealing with a single verb in a present tense. But verb forms can become a huge variety. Even though the forms can be very different kinds, the basic idea is ever remains the same. 3 numbers, 3 persons. And once you know 3 numbers and 3 persons, and if you know that this form belongs to this number, this person, and what is the root, you immediately know the meaning. And that is the way to actually know the meaning. So I was telling you that dictionary does not have gachami. So you will see the gachami, for example, appearing in Gita, or gachati, or gachasi. But dictionary will not give you this form. So if you try to look for the word in the dictionary, you will not find it. What you find in dictionary is gum. So in order for you to know the meaning of this word, you have to know which number, which person, what is the tense, what is the root, and then look up the root if you do not know the root. And that way you know the meaning of the word. So hopefully, I hope this is clear. If you have any questions related to this, please send me the comments. So there is a question: is there a rule that turns the gum, this M, to this gacha? So there are actually, generally speaking, so for example, if I have a root called hus, it means to laugh. And if I have to make the form of this root, then I would just the first third person singular, it will be simply hasati. So hasati, hasati, very simple. But in gum it becomes gachati. So gum is a little bit a special case, and Panini has specified that gum becomes gacha. And I'll discuss more about it. So right now I just was discussing the meaning and the structure of this. We'll also discuss that how to get to these forms. How do I derive? How do I learn the derivation so that if I'm just given gum, I know these forms. So without necessarily remembering each and every word. So there is a structure there, and I'll explain that structure. So it will be more clear. But gum becomes gacha in some tenses, and present tense is one of them. So somebody is asking, can I write the meaning of all the things which I just explained? It will be difficult actually for me to write everything what I'm explaining, but the recording of the video would be available, and you could actually refer to this video in our shared drive. Can the verb forms be different based upon gender? No. So verb forms are not different based upon gender. So in the second person and first person, of course, there is no gender involved, in the sense it's always you and it's always I, irrespective of the gender, whether it's masculine or feminine. So gachami means I go. It doesn't matter whether a man is saying that statement or a woman is saying that statement. Gachami means I go. Gachati also would actually have different things. He goes, she goes, but the verb forms remains the same. The subject changes. So the subject would change. Like there is a different word for he and there is a different word for she in Sanskrit. But the verb form, gachati, remains the same. It does not undergo any change based upon gender. Dual form is, somebody is asking can I explain the dual form and when to use it? Dual form is used when there are two subjects. So if I say Rama and Shyama go, so I would use gachataha. So I would say Ramaha Shyamaha cha gachataha. Rama and Shyama go. So whenever there are two subjects in number, I would use dual forms. In this case, like if we are two friends and I'm saying we both are going there, then you will say gachava. Two people are going. So dual form is used when there are two subjects, two people, or two whatever. It could be people, it could be the verb, as you know, two cars are going, for example. So you would say two cars are going. So you will use the dual form. There is a confusion about present tense and how to identify the tenses. So right now we are actually taking the approach that how to generate the forms of present tense, what the present tense forms look like. I'll explain to you how do we derive them. This part you have to remember, of course, that present tense forms looks like this, and that's how you identify. Remember, our idea is that I should be able to read a word appearing in the scripture. So if gachati appears, you must have that much practice and understanding that you know, oh, gachati is a first person, third person singular form in present tense, and that requires a practice, and that requires a lot of practice actually. So we are just starting, but slowly you will get a hang of it, and you would get more and more confident that, oh, this form looks like it's a present tense third person form. What are the other root words like gum? I just gave an example, hus, but there are many more. Of course, I said about 2000. How to know the root word? So from this, how to know the root word? You only know if you have practiced enough to understand that what could be the root word. Sometimes you make a guess, and but most of the times there is no direct logic that I can tell you immediately gachati would mean this. It requires a lot of practice, and I kind of get an understanding that these that's how the verb forms look like, and that's how I know. So for example, even in English, if the word appears as went, he went, how do you know went? What does went mean? The only thing is, in English they are very limited such number. In Sanskrit those kind of numbers can be exponentially high, but there is a structure. The good thing is, in English, from go, how did it go become went, you do not have much of a structure. But in Sanskrit, even though the number of word forms are enormous, there is a very good structure there. So if you understand the structure, you don't have to memorize each and every word form. Okay, let me see. So somebody is asking about the future and past tenses. We will discuss them eventually. Right now it's the present tense. Why is there a dual conjugation? I explained, because when we dealing with the two subjects, two numbers, we use the dual. Can their verb forms be different based upon gender? No. It's somebody is saying, if you are addressing your superior and say you go, does it change to show respect? There is a way to show a little bit respect, but you go is not considered disrespectful, but there is a more formal way of addressing somebody, like say for example Guruji. But in general it is not considered disrespectful. It's considered fine to speak to superiors, you go. It is that there is a more formal way also, which if time permits I'll explain later. Plural can be many subjects. Somebody is asking, just to clarify the number, since plural could be many subjects. Yes, plural could be 3 or more. So singular, 1, dual, 2, and remaining everything 3 and ever plural. What if you are writing me and 2 others? Somebody is asking. So when you are saying me and 2 others, you would actually use plural form, because the number of subjects would become 3. Again, it also depends upon how do you write, because Sanskrit has a little bit different notations. How do you do the subjects? But generally it would be plural form. So if I understand it right, Sanskrit has regular verbs which are always in the same way, and there are irregular verbs like gum that are built differently. Is a list available of irregular verbs? So the problem in Sanskrit is actually that how do you identify the irregular verbs? Why I say it's a problem, because Panini has given so many rules that, and he could just say basically this form is different for this particular tense, and he will give a rule for that. Other things could be same. So yes, there is some sort of a rules which we will discuss, but irregular, just saying that these are the irregular forms, it's a little bit difficult list actually in Sanskrit. However, there are 8 roots, and there is a list which are like gum, which becomes gach. Like, so there are like 8 such roots Panini has identified, which undergo the change in present tense. So could we use we go instead of dual form? Not if there are 2 subjects. If there are 2 subjects, like you are saying we both go, then you should use dual form. Hasati needs to have a subject, doesn't it? Not necessary. So as per the grammatical rules, the sentence is complete. But in terms of the meaning, yes. In terms of the meaning, the subject is not very obvious, and in that case, I said the default subject becomes he. He is laughing. Are there any exceptions to this general rule how to conjugate based upon gum? Yes, there are a lot of exceptions actually, and that's what makes verb a very, very difficult nut to crack. But many verbs are just based upon this paradigm. So if you know one, you can actually know many. Please conjugate another verb so we can see what the ending is for each person. We'll do that. I'll explain to you how do we actually get to this structure. So we'll do that. Could you re-highlight the use of Sanskrit in computer programming, please? Please, I would like to, but if I cannot go back again and again to the things in the class, so please refer back to the earlier classes where I have spoken about it in detail. Does Gachava means we go? Gachava is the dual form, first person. Dual form means we two go or we both go. So at the end of a sentence, there is a vertical line to end the sentence. Where is the keyboard? I find this line. So I would request you, when we are discussing this topic, I'll take these questions later on, but when we are discussing the topic of the verb, please limit your questions to this particular topic. That way, we all are actually dealing with the live interaction would make much more sense. I'll explain this part later. Where do we find that character? That character is actually simply, if you put a full stop, it will generate that character. Why is the third person called as Prathama Purusha? As I said, it's Sanskrit, and Sanskrit just uses this terminology. So understand just in that fashion that Sanskrit uses this terminology. Prathama Purusha means it is something I'm talking about. So I am telling that he is going. So he becomes the first Prathama Purusha for me, or the third person. Please give example of third, second, and first person. I already did. Third person is, second person is you, first person is I, and third person is he, she, or it, or any other person. Swamiji, I know no Hindi and no Sanskrit, yet you explain really clearly. I feel that to make effective use of time, it's better to have 2 breaks so that you can group questions and answers. That's why interactive class will not work. We need to be patient and go one step time. Thank you for your understanding. I'll try to take as much as I can interactively, and then we'll of course have the breaks also. Does all these rules same for living and non-living beings? Yes. The Sanskrit gender, so I'll explain a little bit more later, but in Sanskrit, the gender, there are 3 genders. I explained to you: masculine, feminine, and neuter. They do not depend upon whether a person is living or non-living. So it is actually more of a grammatical construct. So a given word would be either masculine or feminine or neuter, not a given physical object. So in Sanskrit, one has to be very clear about that. A given noun, a given word actually, would be designated either as masculine, feminine, or neuter, not the object it represents. What would that mean is, if I say book, in English, book is non-living, becomes a neuter. In Sanskrit, if I have a word for book called pustaka, that becomes neuter because it's a neuter word. But for the another word for book, that is called grantha, that becomes masculine. So this part, so if I say, for example, pustakam, pustaka, neuter we normally write as pustakam. So it is actually a neuter gender. Another word for book, which is grantha, and that is actually masculine. So it is actually the specific words which have the gender, not the object it represents. So how do I know the gender of a word? You look up in the dictionary. That's the best way to actually know. There are like lot of grammatical rules, but in practically, just look up a word in the dictionary, and it will tell you what is the gender. Sometimes a word appears in more than one gender, like it could be masculine or neuter, and that's how it is. So you could apply either form, masculine or neuter. I would prefer if we could just practice instead of explaining things that naturally will come up later. Well, we'll have the time for practice also, and I just wanted to make sure that I also take up the questions. So I'm glad that we are having some sort of a live interaction, and I was able to address your question in real time. I hope this is clear. I'll just now very quickly explain to you that, and we'll go a little bit more detail about this later. But I'll just about quickly explain to you that how these forms are generated. So if you say gacha, you will notice that I add, actually let me write in ti, taha, anti, si, tha, tha, ami, avah, amaha. Before that, it is the same form, gacha. So ti, taha, anti, si, tha, tha, mi, vaha, maha. That actually is the list of suffixes. So if I know that what is my form, I just apply the suffixes and I generate the table. So you just remember that these are the suffixes for present tense, and it will be very easy for you to keep identifying the forms. So I will not remember the table for like 2000 word forms, 2000 roots, but I remember the endings. And if I see these endings in a book, I make a very intelligent guess that this looks like a present. So if I say gach, something ending with C, it's not 100%, remember, because Sanskrit endings can be tricky. But I can make a very good guess, very intelligent guess that this is actually a second person form of singular, of some verb. And based upon the verb, I can probably guess the root. And then I can look up in the dictionary and find the meaning. That's how I actually identify. So these are the suffixes actually. And suffixes are the important ones thing for you remember, and based upon that you will be able to identify the forms. Just one thing you have to remember in suffixes, like you see there is a long a here. So there is a long a. So in the first person forms, the last row, you will be just making the akara as akara, long a. You will be making akara as an akara. So if I take another root, say hasit, I'll take for example was. There is a root called was. So I'll just remove this so that we'll have a little bit more space right under the table. So I take another root called sorry, I take another root called was. It means to reside, like in residence, to live or to reside as in residence. Was. So there are two steps to get to these forms. So first step is I actually, so this is the root, and then I actually make something called stem. So that stem is actually was V A S A was. So this is called stem. So this is the root, and this is stem. Vasa. In many of the verbs, so there are like different rules for different types of roots, how to make the stem, and we will not discuss those things, that how to make those stems. Just understand that there is a step from root to making a stem. Most part, if you just add akara into verse, it becomes stem. That's the general principle for many roots, not for all the roots. So stem in Sanskrit is called anga. So root is dhatu. So I'll just write the Sanskrit words also, those who are interested in Sanskrit terminology. So root is dhatu, and this is anga. Stem is anga. So it becomes a stem. You see, I just added akara, and that's how many of the roots would be. Again, there are a fair amount of roots and quite popular use which do not follow the same pattern of making a stem, and some of the rules could be quite complex, how to make a stem from the root, but you get a root. Basically, idea is that you get a stem. So idea is that you start with the root and you get a stem, and then from there next step would be to actually oh, so next step would be to actually add these suffixes. These I discussed you. Ti, taha, anti, si, tha, tha, and it's pretty straightforward. So in basa, if I have to create this table, once I have a, so I'll just draw a table here. So this is our singular form. This is dual. This is plural. This is the third person. This is the second person. and this is the first person. Okay. So if you go back, this is ti. So I add ti in the stem. So my my root is vasa, and the stem is vasa vasa. So v a s a plus t becomes vasati. So it's as simple actually. So once I know gachati, I understand the concept of adding a suffix, and I add vasa plus. So this could be a bit, this is actually not a T, this is the plus sign. So vasa plus T, maybe I can draw in a little bit different color. So vasa plus T is actually vasati. Vasati. Similarly here, vasa plus taha would be vasataha. It's a little bit different here slightly. So vasa plus, here the, as you saw, the suffix is anti, but both these a and a become single only. So as if one is dropped. So vasanti. So you have to remember this part here. This is important in the plural, third person plural. So third person plural, this and this only result into this. So not like double a, not like long a. So vasa, vasanti. So if you see the Devanagari, you can see Devanagari, but right now I'm as I said, primarily I'm keeping the primary language of this class is the Roman, not Devanagari. So please learn the Roman notations, and you of course learn the Devanagari also. But right now I'm just writing here. I'll write in Devanagari later on. Vasati, vasataha, vasanti. Now, once you understand vasa means to reside, what does vasanti means? Like if somebody says vasanti, you means they live. You understand that. Second person, singular. So same logic. You will go vasa plus si. Here the prefix is vasa si. Then here prefix is vasa plus tha. Vasatha. Here vasa plus tha vasatha. Okay. So if I say vasasi, means I know that you live. That's what it means if it appears in a sentence, because it's the second person singular. So vasasi would mean you live. First person, and so here it would be vasa plus me. That is the suffix. And what I told you there, if you remember, in case of gacha, in case of first person, you make it long a, vasami. So even though the suffix is actually me, but the actual form becomes vasami. And this is important thing to remember in first person forms. So even though the here this becomes this. Same here. So all the first person forms will follow the same thing. So vasa plus vaha would be vasavaha. And here the form is vasa plus maha vasa maha. So same logic in all the first person forms. Even though the short a becomes long a. You see here, long a. And remember this part, this long a, long a. And here you have to remember vasa plus anti, still it remains short a. Other than these forms, it's pretty straightforward. You just put the suffix. So now you see, you know one form, one root, and you can create this table for actually hundreds and hundreds of roots, maybe more than 1,000 roots actually. So half of the roots out of 2,000, you actually would follow this kind of logic very easily, very straightforward. More than about half. The only thing is that there are some roots which are actually quite common in usage, which do not follow the same logic very straightforward. They follow the logic same because the suffixes remain the same. So ti, taha, anti, si, tha, tha, mi, vaha, maha. These suffixes do not undergo any change, no matter what the root is. As long as it's a present tense, suffixes would remain the same. But the form, making the form will not be so straightforward because of the sandhi rule. So I remember these actually are happening. I'm joining these words actually. So there is some sort of a rule actually which are actually coming into play. And those rules are very straightforward in those cases where the stem is ending in akara. Stem is ending in akara. So those rules are pretty straightforward. But those rules are not so straightforward when the ending is not in akara. And that's what gives rise to some complexity in the verb form. So even though suffix remains the same, the ending of the stem is not an akara, the forms actually undergo significant changes actually. But as I told you, out of 2,000 roots, more than 1,000 actually follow this logic very happily. So these are the endings for present tense. For past and others, they will be slightly different for other tenses. But for present tense, these are the endings. So now what happens in case of gacha, gam, It is just that the stem, so here you saw the root was to reside and stem became vasa. In case of gacha, the root is gum, root is gum, and as I told you, Panini has said that for this root, when you are making the stem for present tense, use the word gacha. So that's what actually becomes the stem. So that is what actually made it's gachati from gum. But this stem change is not so common. It's only a few roots where this stem change undergoes. Those roots are common roots, so we'll have to learn those stem change. But once stem changes and you know the stem, it's very easy. It's exactly the same logic, absolutely no difference. So this logic of adding the suffixes and generating the table is actually very, very straightforward. So let me just see a few questions. Devanagari, somebody is requesting me to write in Devanagari. I would suggest you please do the Devanagari part in the exercise. I'll just give you some exercise. Where we can find the notes? Notes would be available in the shared drive. If the person's name is Basanti, I can say Basanti Basati? Yes, you can. It will be perfectly fine, Sanskritam actually. So the suffixes are the same for every verb conjugated in the past tense, or it depends also from the stem. I mean, if the stem is not in akara, it can influence also the suffixes and conjugation. Suffixes remain the same even if the stem is not ending in akara, but because of the sandhi rules, the final form can look quite different than this. But the suffixes remain same. You will still see some sort of ti, but it may not be as obvious in many cases. So akara, as you remember from our last discussion, it's the sound of a. So when I say it's ending in akara, that means last character is akara, short a, akara. So we call it ending in akara. So stem is ending in akara. Okay, so that is the first letter of the alphabet. So it's pretty straightforward. I hope it should not cause any questions because it was a pretty simple thing. You see the power of Sanskrit structure. If you understand this one verb and you understand the meaning and the structure, all of a sudden more than 1,000 verbs structure become clear to you. If I ask you to write the same table for at least 1,000 of the verbs, you would just be able to do that. And you will, once you know the meaning of the root, you will also know the meaning of the verb. That is the power of structure here. So even though we are talking of so many words, but because of the structure, it becomes easier to understand. So in India, many people have this idea that Sanskrit is a language where you have to mug up a lot of things. And that's not true. Sanskrit is actually a language where you can understand most of the things. And when you understand, the things become very clear. And even the memorization, wherever it is required, it becomes much more easy and much more joyful. So with this, I would actually give you a little bit of a homework. And the homework is this. I'll just pull up the exercise. So this exercise is there. So it will be done on the paper. Please, for the following roots, please write the verbal conjugations as it is done for root gum in the example below. So I have given the gum example below. I have also written the meanings here for you, which I explained. He goes, they too go, they go. So all these meanings are given so that you know. And pruch is the root. Prach, root is prach. Stem actually, so here stem undergoes slight change, as you can see. It becomes this rukara from refa. from Refa, this is the R, which is called Refa sound. If you remember, it's not Rakara. So sounds are identified by adding the word Kara in Sanskrit. So P sound of Pa, it's called Pakara. So I will say Pakara, Rakara, Akara, like this. Sound of A is Akara. So sound of Ra is actually called Refa, but sound of Ru is called Rukara. So Refa becomes Rakara in this while making the stem. So Pracha. And its meaning is to ask, like to ask a question in that sense. And I have given you the first, this one, this form, Pruchhati. So this is in any verb table in Sanskrit, no matter which tense or which root it is, this form is considered the key form. So if you understand the logic of the table and you are given this form, the third person singular form, there is a very good possibility that you would be able to understand the whole table. So this form is considered the key form in any Sanskrit verb table. So it becomes Prachati. So please write, if you know Devanagari, please write Devanagari and transliteration as well as the meaning. So just like this table, replicate this table. I have already given you this table, and you have to do for this root Prach. Okay. So this is your homework, or not homework, sorry, classwork right now. So right now it is 10:07. We'll meet at 10:20. So please feel free to write your questions as well as submit this. So please submit this classwork. Send us an email once you do this, and then I'll explain to you a little bit more in terms of homework. Okay. So we'll gather again around 10:20. So I'll mute myself. Welcome back, everyone. So I did see some responses. It's good, and please do keep sending. If you want to send it after the class, if you're not able to send it right away, please do send it. I'll post this exercise also in our repository so that you can access it from there. I want to just explain a few things about our repository, the document repository. So you all know probably how to go there. If not, I'll just tell you that you don't, even if you don't remember the URL, you can still go. So learn.kriya.org. And here you have this Sanskrit course. Click on here and then Sanskrit course documents. And these are our 4 folders where you will find the material. So class notes. So we are putting the class notes by the class number. Yogacharya Amit Baba from Seattle, he's helping me to put together the class notes. Then if the whiteboard printout also, we are putting it here if it's a little bit meaningful, not always. Class videos, they are being put also there. So we put the class 1 and class 2 videos there, and also class 3. I did not just make it as a class 3. I'll change the name probably. So then there is a folder for exercise, and exercise 1, 2, 3, 4. Today I'll post other exercises also, so you would see the exercises. And then this folder, other study material, which is very important. So one thing in this folder, we are constantly updating the documents. So please make sure that you are accessing the latest. Because these are small files. If you have any doubt, you can always download the latest thing. These are not, generally speaking, big files. So just to explain what all the documents are here, we have a Bhagavad Gita text, which is just the text in Devanagari and transliteration. We have Bhagavad Gita translation here in English, but the text is in actually Sanskrit, Devanagari. Then we have nominal declensions like Rama and other. We have not covered them in detail yet. We will, but this is in this document we'll keep all the nominal forms. Then we have the prayers of the class, which we do in the starting and end. This is the presentation. So this will, as I said, this will keep updating as I add the new slides. I'll update this document. There is a Sanskrit alphabet. There is a transliteration scheme, and then there is a useful link. So I'll double click on that because this is quite important. And these are actually all the useful links I have put together in one place, so that you don't have to keep on searching for the links in different places. So one is Sanskrit tool that we are using for typing Sanskrit on computer. You can access this tool here. Fonts for Sanskrit. So please install these fonts, because some of the documents which I'm posting in the drive, they are using these fonts. And if you don't have these fonts, the documents may not be very readable. So please install these fonts. Learning Devanagari script. So those who are interested in learning Devanagari script, there are certain tools. This is an interactive tool, and these two are actually the books which discuss in pretty good detail. They are written very well books actually, and they are available for free download. So I have provided the links. You could you can actually those who are interested, these are the workbooks. So the book shows step by step how to make the strokes to make a Devanagari character. If you want to learn the Sanskrit pronunciation, this is the link. These are the websites which are having a lot of good Sanskrit material, and I'm also taking some of the material from these websites in our course material. So you use these websites if you want to get more information. Then there was some request from students about Ashtadhyay and Dhatu Patha, like list of Panini Sutras and Sanskrit roots, like the whole list, and other things. So most of these links, they are actually referred to pretty advanced courses in Sanskrit. They are used there. But I have provided them at least the list of roots. You could look at the list of roots and see how many roots are there and what are their meanings. But so this is for reference work actually. The Sanskrit dictionary, you could actually go to Sanskrit dictionary. They have compiled multiple dictionaries in one place, and when you look up a word, it actually shows the meaning of that word in all the dictionaries. And then this is very important, and this I want you to understand and download. So these are the Sanskrit books, actual books. I'll show you. This is the book which I actually told you to recommended this for this course. Thomas Egenes, Introduction to Sanskrit by Thomas Egenes. This is in two parts, part 1 and part 2. We mostly would be using part 1, but please download both of these books. We would be using these books as part of our course. I would be giving you the exercises from these books. So I will not be giving you some of the exercises. I will just tell you, or I'll refer you the page number of the book, and then I'll tell you, please look up and read the book. So please download these books. If you have the physical copy, very good. If you don't have, you can download these. And we would be using some course material. Actually, this will become our reference book for you also. It would be good that there would be something that you can go back to refer and learn. And this is written nicely. There are some minor problems which I'll explain to you later on, but they are written very well, right from the perspective of a beginner, and does not presuppose any knowledge of Sanskrit or Devanagari script. So please use these books. We would be taking a help of these books in our course. I would recommend you that one of the homework for you is to read first 3 chapters, first 3 lessons. So this book is organized by lessons. So whatever we have covered, you can actually look at the first 3 lessons and try to do the exercise of those lessons if you can. But please do read the lessons, because next time when we cover, we would be probably doing the 4th lesson or onwards. I also want to explain to you some of the exercises which I am going to give you for the homework, and these are the exercises. So exercise 6 for home. So I'll post these exercises in the folder. You can download from there. So this is to be done on paper. And for the following roots, you would be writing the conjugations, like basically the table, as it is done for the root gum. And I have given again the example of root gum in the here on the next page, but you also have from the previous exercise. Write the meaning also of every verb form in English, just like I have written the meaning here. So please write the meaning also. So when you write it, you say loudly all the forms at least 3 times. So we did not get chance today to do the chanting of these forms, but from next class onwards we would be actually doing a loudly saying the forms. That's how you actually remember. You do not remember just by reading. In Sanskrit, to chant the word, to say it aloud is very important. So please say it aloud, and and while also paying the attention on the meaning of the words. So for example, if I say bodhati, so you will say loudly bodhati, but at the same time in your mind you would understand that it means he understands. Bodhati means he understands, like this. So these are the forms. I have given you the root word, I have given you the stem, I have given you the meaning and the 3rd person singular, and you would generate the table. Please double check your work. Please, before you send, make sure that the forms are correct. When you are writing on the paper, make sure your handwriting is quite legible. If both in Devanagari and Roman script. If you are not writing Devanagari, that's fine. But if you're writing Devanagari, please make sure that your handwriting is quite legible. So this is the exercise, one exercise you have to do for these many roots for homework. Other exercise is same thing to be done on computer. So basically what I'm expecting, you will just copy the whole table as it is. This is like a table in the Word, and you would replace the different words for different roots depending upon the root. So the same exercise you would be doing on the computer. Then there is another homework, which is, it may look like a lot, but it's actually not so much. It's to be done on the paper, and these are the translation from English to Sanskrit. So there are some very simple sentences. Everything which you will understand, you will know from whatever work we have done. And there are Sanskrit to English from the verbs. So these are exercise and solutions I have taken from this website, and you can look up there. There is solutions available, but please do not look up the solutions. And please have the solution of exercise 6 with you before you start this exercise. So exercise 6 basically gives you all the verb forms. Then you can easily find out what is the word for these verb forms, and you can write solve these exercises. After you solve with the help of the paper, with the help of the tables, now try to solve next time without looking at the tables and see if you can remember the forms. So these 3 exercises are for the homework, plus downloading the Thomas Egenes book and reading 3 lessons. We have gap of 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. Next class would be on Monday morning. So hopefully you would have enough time to catch up and do these exercises. It is important that you remain current, so that when you attend the classes live next time, you will not be feeling like lost. We also have found some way of having live interaction. So for now, we'll keep it through comments. Later on, we'll see that if we can have an audio way of also live interaction. For now, I would just stop here as it is our time also is finished. If you have any questions, please feel free to write us an email. I do look at these questions. You may not be getting the response right away, but I will next class probably I'll take up those questions and answer those questions for the benefit for the whole class. So I'll post these exercises in our exercise folder, and from there you can download, solve, and send us the solutions. Any questions, comments, feel free to send us on the email. With this, we'll do our closing prayers. So please let us chant together. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody.